The rain hammered down like God's own fury, turning the empty stretch of I-80 into a black mirror of shattered dreams, and my old Ford pickup sputtered its last breath right there in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. I slammed the hood shut, cursing under my breath, when blue and red lights pierced the storm like a lifeline I didn't deserve. He stepped out of the cruiser, rain slicking his uniform to his broad shoulders, and with one look from those storm-gray eyes, he said, "You look like a man running from more than just a busted alternator." And in that instant, I knew my carefully guarded world was about to crack wide open. I was Samuel Hayes, 28 years old, fresh off a bad breakup in Omaha that had left me hollowed out and questioning every choice I'd ever made. I'd packed a duffel bag with jeans, a few flannels, and the lingering ache of loving someone who couldn't love me back the same way. My ex, Jake, had been the all-American dream, quarterback in college, now a real estate hotshot with a smile that could sell ice to Eskimos. But beneath it all, he was terrified of what we were, of the whispers in his small-town family that would turn to shouts if they knew. So he'd chosen the easy out, a fiancé from his church group, a life scripted by everyone but him. I'd walked away not because I wanted to, but because staying meant erasing pieces of myself I'd fought too hard to keep. That night on the highway, with thunder rumbling like the growl in my chest, I wasn't thinking about Jake. I was thinking about survival, getting to my cousin's place in Cheyenne, Wyoming, where I could crash on his couch and figure out how to rebuild without the weight of what-ifs. The cop, Matthew, his badge red, didn't buy my story about a simple breakdown. He shone his flashlight under the hood, rain dripping from the brim of his hat, and muttered something about the carburetor being flooded. "Won't start in this mess," he said, his voice low and steady, like the kind of anchor you didn't know you needed until the waves hit. "I can give you a lift to the next town, or you can wait here for a tow that'll cost you an arm and a leg." I hesitated, wiping water from my face, my soaked t-shirt clinging like a second skin. Strangers in uniforms weren't my favorite company. Too many memories of high school locker rooms and sideways glances that made my stomach twist. But there was something in Matthew's face, a quiet intensity that didn't scream authority, more like quiet understanding. He was maybe 30, with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass and hair cropped close, dark and wet. His eyes, though, those held stories I recognized, the kind etched by nights alone wondering if you'd ever fit into your own skin. "Fine," I said, grabbing my bag from the passenger seat. "Town it is." We slid into his cruiser, the heater blasting warm air that smelled faintly of coffee and leather. The wipers thwacked rhythmically against the downpour as he pulled onto the interstate, the silence between us thick but not uncomfortable. I stared out at the blurred taillights of semis ghosting by, my mind replaying Jake's last words. "It's not about you, Sam. It's about everything else. Lies, all of it." But Matthew broke the quiet first. "You from around here?" he asked, glancing over with that half-smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Omaha originally, heading west to start over." I kept it vague, the way you do when you're carrying baggage heavier than your suitcase. He nodded, like he got it. "Wyoming's got that pull, doesn't it? Wide open spaces, fewer questions." There was a pause, the kind where the air hums with unspoken things, and then he added, softer, "I grew up in Lincoln. Small town outside it. Place where everybody knows your business before you do." I chuckled, bitter. "Sounds familiar. Mine was Kearney, cornfields and Friday night lights. The kind of spot where being different gets you a one-way ticket to whispers or worse." His grip tightened on the wheel, just a fraction, but I caught it. "Yeah," he said, voice dropping. "Worse." And that's when he said it, the words that upended everything. We were idling at a red light on the outskirts of North Platte, rain sheeting the windows like a veil, and he turned to me fully, his face illuminated by the dash glow. "Look, I don't know you, Samuel, but I've seen that look in the mirror too many times. The one that says you're tired of hiding. If you're running from a ghost, don't let it chase you forever. Sometimes, the only way out is through. And hell, maybe you need someone to walk it with you." My heart stuttered. No one had ever called me out like that, not with kindness laced in the steel. I wanted to bolt, to laugh it off as cop intuition, but his eyes held mine, steady and unflinching, like he'd been waiting for this conversation his whole life. "How'd you?" I trailed off, the question hanging. "Comes with the job," he said, but his smile faltered. and maybe a few scars of my own. The light turned green, and he eased forward, but the moment lingered, electric. By the time we reached the dingy motel on the edge of town, a neon vacancy sign flickering like a bad omen, I felt seen in a way that terrified me. He walked me to the office, paid for the room with a flash of his card, department expense, he lied smoothly. And as the clerk handed over the key, Matthew leaned in close. Get some rest. I'll swing by at dawn with a mechanic contact. And Sam, whatever you're carrying, it doesn't define you. I watched his taillights fade into the night, my key jangling in numb fingers, and for the first time in months, the ache in my chest shifted, not gone, but shared, like he'd cracked the door to let in a sliver of light. Dawn came too soon, gray and reluctant, the kind of Midwest morning that promises nothing but holds you anyway. I woke to the rumble of an engine outside my window, coffee strong enough to wake the dead waiting on the rickety table. Matthew was there, leaning against his cruiser in civilian clothes now, a faded UNL hoodie and jeans that hugged his frame just right, holding 2 styrofoam cups like an offering. Figured you'd need this more than sleep, he said, handing one over with that easy grin. We sat on the motel's sagging porch steps, steam rising from the coffee as the town stirred awake. A distant train whistle, the hum of a diner opening its doors. Conversation flowed easier in daylight, stripped of the uniform's armor. He told me about growing up in that Lincoln suburb, the pressure of being the golden boy, varsity wrestler, straight-A student, the son every parent bragged about at barbecues. But inside, he said, staring into his cup, I was screaming. First crush was on my best friend, sophomore year. We kissed once, behind the bleachers after a game. He freaked, told everyone it was a dare. I spent the next 2 years pretending it never happened. His words landed like punches, soft but bruising. I shared bits of my own mess. Jake's proposal announcement at our mutual friend's wedding. The way he'd pulled me aside afterward with tears in his eyes, begging for one last time before the ring went on her finger. I said no, I admitted, voice raw. Walked out and kept walking. Matthew listened without judgment, his knee brushing mine accidentally, or not, and neither of us moved away. By noon, my truck was patched enough to limp along, and he insisted on convoying me west. Safety in numbers, he joked, but his eyes said more. We stopped at a roadside cafe outside Ogallala, the kind with checkered floors and pie under glass domes, where truckers nursed hangovers and locals swapped gossip. Over greasy eggs and hash browns, he opened up further. His divorce 2 years back, not because his ex-wife suspected, but because the lie of their marriage had hollowed him out. She deserved better, he said quietly, and I deserved to breathe. No kids, thank God, but the fallout had nearly cost him his badge, nights drowning in whiskey, pulling over speeders just to feel in control. You're out now? I asked, fork midway to my mouth. He shrugged, that shadow crossing his face. To a few. My partner on the force, an old buddy from the academy. Family? Not yet. Dad's the fire and brimstone type, preacher in retirement. Mom follows his lead. Coming out would be like dropping a bomb on their whole world. I nodded, the weight familiar. My own folks were gone. Car wreck when I was 20, but the echoes lingered in aunts and uncles who still sent Bible verses via text after Jake and I went public on Instagram. Then quickly scrubbed it. It's a choice, Sam, one had written. Pray on it. As if love was a sin you could sweat out. We hit the road again, Wyoming's plains unfolding like a promise, goldenrod waving in the wind. Matthew's cruiser led the way, a black and white shepherd through the vastness. By evening, we were skirting the edge of Cheyenne, the Rockies looming purple in the distance. He suggested crashing at his place, a small ranch style on the outskirts, inherited from an uncle who'd raised him summers. No strings, he said. Just a home-cooked meal and a couch that doesn't smell like mothballs. I said yes before my brain caught up. His home was lived-in chaos. Books on policing and poetry stacked on the coffee table, a guitar gathering dust in the corner, photos of him grinning with a golden retriever named Scout, who bounded over to slobber on my jeans. Dinner was steak and potatoes on the back deck, stars popping out one by one over the horse pastures. Wine loosened our tongues, Cabernet from a California label he swore by, and stories turned to dreams. He wanted to write, maybe a memoir on the hidden lives of small-town cops. I confessed my stalled graphic design gig, the itch to illustrate stories that mattered, like ours. As the fire pit crackled, casting flickering shadows, our hands found each other across the Adirondack chairs. No rush, no desperation, just fingers interlacing, a quiet anchor. "This feels dangerous," I whispered, heart pounding. Matthew's thumb traced my knuckle. "We're like coming home." He leaned in, our foreheads touching, breath mingling in the cool night air. The kiss, when it came, was slow, exploratory, a question answered in the press of lips, the taste of wine and want. It wasn't fireworks, it was rain after drought, soaking deep. But dawn brought reality's bite. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Heard you're headed west. We need to talk. It's not what you think." Cryptic, loaded. I deleted it, but the seed of doubt took root. Days blurred into a rhythm I hadn't known I craved. Mornings with Scout's cold nose nudging me awake. Coffee brewed strong on Matthew's percolator. Lazy afternoons sketching by the creek that bordered his land while he patrolled the back roads. Cheyenne welcomed me like an old friend. Its brick downtown with craft breweries tucked into historic buildings. The Depot Museum whispering tales of pioneers who'd chased horizons for less. Matthew showed me the hidden spots. A dive bar called the Buckhorn where locals two-stepped to Merle Haggard. A hiking trail up Horsetooth that ended with views of the snowy peaks that made your chest ache with possibility. He was a natural teacher, patient with my fumbling steps into his world. One evening, after a shift that left him bone-tired from chasing a domestic call, folks tearing each other apart over nothing, he'd grumbled. We drove out to Vidavoo, those massive granite boulders sculpted by glaciers into fantastical shapes. We climbed one at sunset, hands scraping rough stone, laughter echoing as I slipped, and he caught me, pulling me flush against him. Up top, wind whipping our hair, he wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin on my shoulder. "See that?" he murmured, pointing to the valley below, lights twinkling like fireflies. "That's us now, solid, weathering whatever comes." I turned in his hold, kissing him with the sun's dying warmth on our skin, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just us. Two men piecing together a fragile piece from the shards of our pasts. But peace, I've learned, is a jealous lover. It demands vigilance, and I wasn't watching close enough. The first crack appeared a week in, over breakfast burritos at a food truck parked by the stockyards. My phone lit up again. "Jake," persistent as kudzu. "Call me. Emergency." Against my better judgment, I stepped away, dialing from the bed of Matthew's truck while he grabbed napkins. Jake's voice was frantic, edged with that boyish charm that had hooked me years ago. "Sam, listen, I'm calling off the wedding. It's you, always has been. Meet me in Denver next weekend. Please." My stomach dropped. Denver was a straight shot south, close enough to tempt, far enough to hide. "Jake, it's over. I'm with someone." The words felt foreign, real in a way they hadn't been before. Silence, then a laugh that curdled. "With someone? That cop who picked you up? Saw the post on his department's Facebook. Officer Kane assists stranded motorist. Romantic, huh? But come on, Sam. You know how this ends. We're the real thing." I hung up, pulse thundering, and when Matthew returned, I plastered on a smile that didn't reach my eyes. He noticed, of course he did, but chalked it to job stress, pulling me into a hug that smelled of sage and safety. That night, as we lay tangled in his sheets, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my back, I almost told him. Almost. But the fear whispered, what if he thinks you're not over it? What if this is too soon, too messy? Instead, I buried it, letting the secret fester like an untreated wound. Matthew had his own shadows, though he doled them out in careful measures. Over late-night bonfires, he'd talk about his ex, Lisa, not with longing, but regret. "We met at the academy," he'd say, poking at the embers. "She saw the cracks, tried to fill them, but I couldn't give her what she needed. When she found my browser history, searches for coming out after marriage, she didn't rage. Just packed a bag and said, 'Find your truth, Matt. I'll find mine.'" He'd pause, eyes distant. Hurt like hell, but it was the kindest cut. I envied that mercy. My family had never known about Jake. Too risky, too raw. But the hypothetical judgment loomed large, a ghost at every holiday table. Matthew's folks were alive and meddlesome, living an hour east in a double-wide with a cross-stitched, blessed sign over the door. He'd visit monthly, enduring sermons on family values while biting back the truth that could shatter them. One day, he'd promise me, squeezing my hand under the table during a rare double date with his partner, Ruiz, and his wife. When it's right. But right is subjective, and mine started unraveling 2 weeks later. I landed a freelance gig, illustrating a children's book on Wyoming wildlife for a local press, working from Matthew's spare room turned studio. It felt like progress, roots tentatively sinking. Then, a package arrived. No return address, just my name scrawled in Jake's looping script. Inside, a velvet box with the signet ring he'd worn since college, engraved with our initials intertwined, and a note. Yours forever. Denver. Don't make me beg. I stared at it for hours, the metal cold against my palm, memories flooding. Stolen weekends in Lincoln motels. Jake's head on my chest whispering futures we'd never claim. Guilt twisted sharp. Had I led him on by leaving the door ajar? By not hating him enough? I hid the box in my duffel, but the weight followed me. Matthew came home early that day, grease on his hands from fixing a neighbor's fence. Rough shift, I asked, forcing levity as he washed up. He dried his hands, leaning against the counter with that appraising look. Nah, saw your truck's tags expired. Handled it for you. Pulled some strings. His smile was proud, domestic, and it gutted me. How could I drag this toxicity into his light? That night, over pasta primavera he'd whipped up, his one fancy recipe, we talked dreams again. He wanted to foster kids someday. The ones bounced between systems like he almost had after his parents' early fights. Show him what steady looks like, he said, eyes soft. I sketched him then, quick lines capturing the curve of his mouth, the earnest tilt of his head, and tacked it to the fridge like a vow. But vows break easy. The misunderstanding brewed slow, sparked by a careless slip. Ruiz texted Matthew about a cold case from Lincoln days, a harassment report involving a closeted officer's ex, details redacted but chilling, threats, stalking, a near miss with a loaded gun. Matthew's face paled as he read it aloud, voice clipped. Sounds like Jake. I blurted, then froze. How did I know the name? I'd never mentioned it. He set his phone down slow. Who's Jake? The air thickened. I stammered through half-truths. The ex, the breakup, nothing more, but his eyes sharpened, cop instincts kicking in. And the package today? You look like you'd seen a ghost. I denied it, heat rising. But the seed of doubt I'd planted in myself bloomed ugly in him. Was I still tangled? Playing rebound? We didn't fight. Not yet. But the kiss that night was tentative, the space between us widening like a fault line. The weekend loomed, Denver calling like a siren's song. Jake's texts escalated. Photos of us from happier days. Voicemails thick with tears. I told her everything. She's gone. We can be free. Free. The word mocked me. I booked a bus ticket in secret, telling Matthew it was a design meetup in Fort Collins. Close enough to lie, far enough to breathe. He bought it, kissing me goodbye with a murmured hurry back. Denver was a blur of concrete and regret. Jake waiting at the station, thinner, eyes hollowed by the same hauntings that had driven us apart. We walked the 16th Street Mall, autumn leaves crunching underfoot, pretending at normalcy over craft beers at a rooftop bar. I was scared, he admitted, hand on mine across the table. But losing you? That's the real terror. His touch ignited old sparks, but they fizzled against the memory of Matthew's steady warmth. By nightfall, in a sterile hotel room overlooking the lights, I chose clarity. I can't, Jake. Not anymore. His face crumpled, accusations flying. I'm weak, indecisive, throwing away us for a stranger. He stormed out, leaving me with the ring and a voicemail from Matthew. Miss you. Call when you're done conquering the world. Relief warred with nausea as I boarded the bus home. The ring mailed back anonymous, a clean break. Or so I thought. Matthew was waiting at the depot, arms crossed, jaw set. Fort Collins, huh? He held up his phone. Ruiz is forward of a Denver PD alert. Suspicious loitering at a hotel, matching Jake's description, flagged as potential harassment. You lied to me. The accusation hit like a slap. It was to end it, for good. But trust, once cracked, doesn't mend neat. You should have trusted me, he said, voice breaking. Instead, you ran back to him. He walked away, leaving me stranded again, this time in the city I'd come to love. Winter clamped down on Cheyenne like a vice, snow drifts piling against Matthew's windows as I holed up in a cheap apartment downtown, the kind with thin walls and a landlady who chain-smoked Virginia Slims on the fire escape. The freelance work trickled in, sketches of pronghorn antelope and lazy rivers. But each stroke of my pencil conjured his face, the way his laugh lines deepened when he teased me about my city boy coffee habits. I'd blown it, I knew. The lie, the secrecy, the echo of Jake that I'd let linger too long. But phoning him? Pride or fear? Take your pick. Kept my thumb hovering over call, without pressing. He didn't reach out either, not directly. Ruiz did, once, over greasy burgers at the Silver Dollar. A bear of a man with a mustache like a broom and eyes that missed nothing. Kane's a vault, he said, ketchup on his chin. But he's hurting Hayes. That cold case. It's Jake's handiwork, stalking complaints from Lisa's new guy. Matt thinks you're mixed up in it, like bait or something stupid. I protested, spilling the Denver truth over refills of Coke, but Ruiz just shook his head. Fix it, or don't. But cops like us, we bury deep, and it festers. The revelation twisted the knife. Jake, unraveling further, his freedom, a delusion dragging innocence down. I filed a report anonymously with Lincoln PD, detailing the ring, the pleas, the hotel meltdown. It felt like betrayal twice over, once to Jake, once to the boy I'd loved, but necessary, a severing. Still, the damage with Matthew loomed larger, a chasm widened by silence. Holiday lights strung Archer Avenue like garlands of regret, families trudging to the depot Christmas market with mittened hands and steaming cider. I wandered it alone, the air crisp with pine and cinnamon, carolers belting, "Oh Holy Night," off-key. That's when I saw him, Matthew, in a wool peacoat, buying a wreath from a vendor with calloused hands. Our eyes met across the crowd, and time stuttered, his surprise melting to wariness, mine to a desperate ache. "Sam," he said, voice neutral as he paid. "Matthew." The wreath dangled between us like a barrier. "Nice night for it." He nodded, shifting weight. "Mom's hosting. Whole clan. Figured I'd play the dutiful son." A beat, then quieter. "You settling in?" "Barely." I swallowed. "Can we talk?" "Not here." He hesitated, glancing at the families laughing nearby, then sighed. "My truck. 5 minutes." We drove in loaded quiet to Kurt Gowdy State Park, the lot empty under a waxing moon, snow crunching under tires. Inside the cab, heater humming, he faced me. "Ruiz told me about Denver. The report. Jake's. It's bad." I ended it. I said, words tumbling. "For real this time. No more ghosts." "But you—" "God, Matt." I lied because I was scared of losing this. "Us." His jaw clenched. And I shut down because I'm a coward. That case hit too close. Reminded me of the kid I was, hiding from my own dad after that bleacher kiss. Thought if I buried it, it'd stay buried. But seeing you with that shadow. He trailed off, rubbing his temple. "What if you're still in it?" "I'm not." I reached for his hand, gloved and cold, and he let me. "Let me prove it." We talked till midnight, confessions peeling back layers, his fear of his father's pulpit rants turning venomous, my terror of being the phase that derails a good man's life. By the time he dropped me at my door, his kiss was fierce, forgiving, a bridge rebuilt, tentative but true. "Slow," he murmured against my lips. But together. Christmas came soft, no family fanfare for me, but Matthew carved out space. A tree in my cramped living room, strung with lights we'd bought at the market, and a dinner of prime rib he'd grilled despite the blizzard. We exchanged gifts wrapped in newsprint. Me, a leather-bound sketchbook embossed with stories unsaid. Him, a silver bracelet etched with coordinates to Vitavu. Our anchor point. That night, curled on the couch with Scouts sprawled across our laps, Bing Crosby crooning on the radio, I felt the stirrings of home, not the blood-and-bone kind, but chosen, hard-won. January brought resolve, but fate's a cruel editor. Matthew's dad, Reverend Elias Kane, announced a revival tour, fire and brimstone stops across the plains, preaching against the moral decay of our age. The subtext? Crystal, rainbow flags at pride events, court rulings on marriage. Matthew confided over whiskey by the fire, his face stormy. He's gunning for the State House next, anti-everything bill. Mom called, begging me to speak at the Cheyenne kickoff. Show the flock your strength, son. I set my glass down. Will you? Hell no. But doubt flickered. Unless. What if it's a sign? Come out on my terms, flip the script. The idea ignited him. Strategic vulnerability, turning the sermon into a testimony. I helped brainstorm. Speeches blending faith and authenticity, drawing from his wrestler's grit and cop's justice. We practiced in his kitchen, me playing devil's advocate with tough questions. What if they disown you? I'd press. Then I lose a ghost, he'd counter, pulling me close. And gain the man I am. But secrets breed in fertile soil, and mine sprouted thorns. Jake's trial loomed, stalking charges, a plea deal in the works, and Lincoln PD looped in Cheyenne for witness statements. Ruiz pulled me aside at the station. Your name's on the affidavit. Kane's dad caught wind. Thinks it's a smear campaign by sodomites to discredit his tour. Elias had cornered Matthew at a family dinner, Bible-thumping accusations. That boy's poison, Matthew. Leading you astray like the devil's own. Matthew stormed to my place that night, eyes blazing. Did you know? About the trial tying back to me. I blinked, blindsided. What? No. He showed me emails, Sam. From Jake's lawyer, CC to the press. Officer involved in prior incident. It's twisted, makes it look like I'm the instigator, covering for a lover. His voice cracked. Dad's using it to paint me as the family black sheep. And you're the proof. Misunderstanding erupted, gasoline on embers. I filed to protect people, like your ex's fiancé, not to hurt you. But you didn't tell me. He paced, anguish raw. Everything's a half-truth with you. How do I know this isn't payback? Or worse, that you're still playing both sides? The words eviscerated. Playing? I've been all in, skipping Denver reunions, turning down Omaha jobs to stay here. For us, tears burned, hot and furious. Your dad's the poison, Matt, blaming me for his hate. He stopped, shoulders slumping. Maybe, but trust. It's shattered again. He left, door clicking soft as a guillotine. Days bled into isolation, me sketching furious abstracts of fractured hearts, him dodging calls, buried in shifts. The revival loomed. February 14th, Valentine's irony sharp as a blade. Elias's flyers blanketed town. Reclaim your soul, before it's too late. I couldn't let it stand. Armed with our practiced words, I crashed the prep meeting at the family church, a squat brick building off I-25. Matthew was there, Ty Askew, arguing quietly with his mom, Clara, steel-haired, soft-eyed, the buffer between fire and fragile sun. Elias spotted me first, face purpling. You, out. This is God's house. No, I said, voice steady. It's Matthew's too, and he's got something to say. Chaos. Shouts of abomination. Clara's pleas. Matthew's stunned silence. But he stepped forward, hand finding mine. A public claiming that silenced the room. Dad, enough. I'm gay. Have been since that kiss you called a youthful mistake when you found my journal at 16. Sam's not the villain. He's the man who showed me courage. Elias reeled, clutching his Bible like a shield. Lies. The devil's tongue. Truth. Matthew cut in, voice thunder. And if you can't love me as I am, that's your cross. But I'm done carrying it. We walked out into the snow, hand in hand, Clara trailing with whispered apologies and a hug that smelled of lavender and loss. The town buzzed, gossip rippling like wine through aspens. But for us, it was liberation, raw and real. That night, in my apartment, we made love not with urgency, but reverence, bodies mapping forgiveness, whispers weaving promises. No more hiding, he breathed, fingers in my hair. Just us. But high tides pull under. March brought the unexpected, a letter from Elias, not fire, but ash, trembling script admitting he'd known, feared losing his perfect son to a world he couldn't control. Forgive an old fool, it ended. Matthew wept reading it, and we drove east, mending what fractures remained. Spring thawed the plains, and with it, our roots deepened. Joint bank account for the house down payment, adoption classes for that litter of foster pups. Jake's plea deal closed without fanfare. A year probation, therapy mandated, and the scar faded to a lesson. Yet the climax crashed unbidden, a storm from clear skies. April Fool's weekend. Matthew's radio crackled mid-picnic at Lake Hattie. Officer down. Sniper on a rooftop near the Capitol. Elias's tour had riled extremists, a patriot cell protesting agenda bills. Matthew raced in, me trailing in his truck, hard in throat. The standoff. Rooftop rigged with manifestos. The shooter a kid from Lincoln, barely 20, radicalized online. Matthew talked him down. Hours of bullhorn pleas echoing his own vulnerability. I know hiding hurts, son. But this? It ends lives, not pain. The kid surrendered, tears streaming, and as SWAT cuffed him, Matthew caught my eye from the chaos. Alive, unbroken. In the aftermath, hospital waiting room, Elias arrived. Not preaching, but embracing. You saved him, like you saved me. Redemption, hard-earned. We emerged changed. Me illustrating a book on resilience. Matthew spearheading department trainings on mental health for queer officers. Betrayals sting dulled to wisdom. Conflicts forged steel. 1 year on, stranded no more. We stood on that Vitavu boulder at dusk. Rings exchanged in a quiet ceremony. Cliffs our witnesses, stars our vows. Changed my life, Matthew whispered, echoing that rainy night. And damn if he hadn't changed mine too. Looking back, that midnight rescue wasn't fate's cruel joke. It was the pivot, the moment the universe conspired to strip us bare and rebuild stronger. But life doesn't wrap neat. It unspools and loops, testing the seams. Summer scorched the plains, wildflowers rioting along the Laramie River as Matthew and I settled into the ranch house. White clapboard with a wraparound porch, the kind of place that whispered forever if you listened close. We painted the kitchen sage green, hung my illustrations of Wyoming lore on the walls. Cowboys under endless skies, not the Marlboro Man myth, but real men with calloused hearts and quiet loves. Adoption papers loomed, a bureaucratic tango that had us pacing doctors' offices and home studies. Think we'll pass the vibe check. I'd joke, as social workers I'd scouts chewed slippers. Matthew would squeeze my knee under the table, his touch a talisman. We've got this. Elias's transformation lingered, fragile as new shoots. Weekly calls evolved to Sunday dinners. Clara's pot roast. Awkward silences bridged by talk of grandkids, not sermons. The boys got your eyes, Matt. He'd grunt once. Over pie, referring to a neighbor's tyke. Progress, inch by inch. But old wounds suppurate, and as came bubbling during a July heat wave, when a national news crew descended on Cheyenne for a redemption arc segment. From pulpit to pride, one pastor's reckoning. Matthew begged off participating, let him own it, but Elias insisted, camera lights hot in their living room. The interview aired prime time. Tears, mea culpas, a halting, I was wrong about my son. About love. Views spiked. Donations to his reformed ministry poured in, now focused on bridging divides. We watched from our couch, popcorn forgotten, Matthew's hand clammy in mine. Proud? I asked. Yeah, he breathed. And terrified. What if it's performative? It wasn't, not entirely. But the spotlight ignited shadows. Letters flooded the P.O. box. Supporters hailing a miracle. Haters spewing venom. Traitor to the faith. One scrawled in red ink. Postmarked Lincoln. Then the call. Jake. Out on good behavior. Voice slurred from halfway house contraband. Saw your old man's sob story. Pathetic. Bet he's using you for ratings, Sam. Like always. I hung up, but the poison seeped. Doubt, that insidious creep, whispered, is this real? Or are we all just scripting survival? I buried it in work. A mural commission for the community center, vibrant scenes of diverse families picnicking under rainbows. Matthew threw himself into the Academy Mentorship Program, guiding rookies through the closet's minefield. Your story helped, one kid told him, a wide-eyed recruit from Casper. Makes me think I can too. August brought the high. Our first foster placement, twins, Elijah and Micah, 6-year-olds with wide eyes and foster system wariness. They arrived with garbage bags of clothes, clutching stuffed dinosaurs like shields. The first night, as thunder rolled, Elijah crawled into our bed, whispering, "You won't send us back, right?" Matthew gathered him close, voice steady. "Promise." I sketched them sleeping, fierce love swelling. This was it, the family we'd clawed for. But September's equinox equaled out the light. A package arrived, unmarked. Crime scene photos, grainy prints of the sniper standoff, circled with marker, your fault. Blood on queer hands. No note, but the postmark screamed Jake. Panic clawed. He'd violated probation, fixated anew. I showed Matthew, his face ashen. We tell no one. Not yet. We didn't, but the lie compounded, a third will in our bed. Elias caught wind through church whispers, confronting us at a harvest festival. Hayrides and pumpkin patches masking his fury. This stalker, it's that boy from before, isn't it? The one you defended. His voice rose, drawing stares. You're dragging us all down, Matthew. Him too, the boys. Clara hushed him, but damage bloomed. The twins picked up the tension, bedwetting resuming, questions piercing. Are bad men coming? Matthew and I tag-teamed reassurances, but cracks spiderwebbed. Arguments over locks, over my secrecy in hiding the package. You swore no more ghosts, he'd snap. It's protection, I'd counter, voice breaking. For them. For us. The climax crested mid-October, leaves a flame in the foothills. Jake breached Cheyenne, spotted tailing our grocery run, his truck idling blocks away. Matthew called it an anonymous, but the pursuit turned primal. High-speed chase through backroads, ending in a ditch off Highway 210. No shots, no blood, just Jake, cuffed and sobbing as state troopers read rights. I just wanted to warn him, he wailed to me, through the cruiser window. Your dad's a fraud, selling out for likes. You're blind, Sam. The arrest hit headlines, ex-stalkers return, tied to reformed pastor's son, twisting Elias's redemption into scandal. Protests erupted, pickets at the church, one side decrying enablers, the other chanting grace. Matthew's precinct suspended him pending review, fraternization concerns. The chief muttered, eyes sliding away. Elias retreated, radio silence broken only by Clara's texts. Give him time. Betrayal layered thick, Jake's obsession a mirror to our fears, the town's scrutiny a vice. I packed the twins' emergency bag, half expecting the call to relinquish them. This is what hiding breeds, Matthew said one night, whiskey bottle half empty on the counter. Monsters in the dark. Then let's be the light, I pleaded, pulling him to the porch swing. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses. Tell me the worst. All of it. He did. The journal Elias had burned, the academy hazing that left bruises hidden under sleeves, Lisa's miscarriage he'd grieved alone, terrified to mourn openly. I confessed my deepest, nights post-Jake, scrolling Grindr not for hookups, but validation, hating myself for the weakness. I chose you. I ended, tears salting our joined hands. Every time. Dawn broke merciful. Clearance for Matthew. Charges against Jake upgraded to federal. Elias appeared unannounced, Bible in hand. Not as weapon, but olive branch. I failed you, he admitted, voice gravel. Feared the world's hate more than my boy's heart. But seeing those little ones, it broke me open. He stayed for breakfast, flipping pancakes with Elijah on his knee, laughter tentative but true. November's chill softened to Thanksgivings, twins calling us dads, adoption finalized under a judge who winked at our rings. The mural unveiling drew crowds, rainbow threads weaving through cowboy grit, a testament to loves that endure. Winter circled back, anniversary marking that stormy rescue. We drove I-80 east, not fleeing, but reclaiming. Picnic at the breakdown spot, rain pattering soft on the truck hood. Your words, I said, leaning into him. They didn't just change my life. They saved it. Matthew's smile, that anchor grin. Ours. And in the vast American heartland, where horizons bend to will, we drove west, stranded no more, but bound, unbreakable.